Thank you so much for coming out today to the Artist Salon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tycholis. I'm the Education and Public Programs Coordinator here at the Richmond Art Gallery. So before we get started, I just wanted to welcome you all here on behalf of the Musqueam, that we are gathered here on the traditional territories of the Hunkaminam-speaking peoples. Those are the peoples that lived all along the Fraser River Delta, and particularly along Richmond. So welcome and for coming out, and thank you for coming out on this beautiful day. If you haven't been to the salon before, it is a monthly program that takes place on the last Wednesday of every month, both online or in person. We kind of try things out and see how it goes. The program is really designed for visual artists. I try to bring in guests that you want. So if you like what we do, please let me know. It helps us get a grant for the next year for the program to continue. If you want to see certain people or certain types of artists or curators or gallery managers, whatever, let me know. I really try to cater this whole program for you. It's really built around building up a community of artists to help each other with pro-D tips, any career advice that can be had, and just sort of tricks of the trade. And it's really to help keep you making your work. So, I'm here. I've left my cards up there if you want to email me anytime. Let me know if there are certain things that you're interested in hearing about. We also have a Facebook group that is a private group, and there we post calls. So if you are looking for artist opportunities, I try to post there as much as I can. I welcome you to post your events there as well. It's really for the Lower Mainland artist community, so that we are trying to build up here. So if you don't know about that, please look into those things. Check us out for past salons that have been going on online, and hopefully we get to continue this next year. So with all that out of the way, I want to say thank you, Jamie, for coming. Jamie Smith was one of the first people I think I had when the Artist Salon first started a few years ago. So it was really nice to have her back. I've been, of course, stalking her online and keeping track of everything she's been doing and the changes that have been going on in the last few years with Thrive. So I'm so happy to have her here with us tonight. I'm going to do a brief introduction for those of you who don't know her, but it seems like most of you do. So Jamie Smith holds degrees in visual arts and in arts education. She settled in Vancouver in 2014 and created an annual community art walk called ROVE. And in 2015, she founded Thrive, an online community of female identifying and non-binary artists. Jamie creates monochromatic drawings, wooden wall hanging sculptures, and installation work incorporating personal and culturally resonant symbols in an attempt to reckon with the fragility of life, new beginnings, the passage of time, and the depths of loss. Jamie is deeply inspired by Aubrey Beardsley, the Art Nouveau Movement, family crest, Toile pattern design, tarot decks, and Delft pottery, which I am sure you're going to see a lot of that tonight and a lot of her influences. So tonight we will have Jamie do her presentation sort of for the first half, and then we will open it up to questions. Because we are recording, I ask if you can wait for us to give you a mic so that the video people out there can actually hear your questions, okay? And if you don't worry about not wanting to be on camera, we won't film you if you don't want to, just let us know. But just as a reminder, before you blurt out your questions because you're so excited, if you could just wait for a microphone, okay? All right, so without further ado, Jamie Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm a big believer that artists can help other artists, and we actually are how we get ahead because we get it. And so I appreciate you being here. It is midweek. We are trying to get back to a new normal, trying to move beyond COVID, but it's a lot to come out and be together, and it's super meaningful, so thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I am trying out this talk. I do quite a bit public speaking or teaching community, and this is the first time I've kind of shared this work, so I'm giving it a go, and I'm really excited afterwards to hear questions, feedback. I wanted to talk about making art about the hard stuff. I feel as an artist, you're always digging deep, you're always trying to be vulnerable, but sometimes there's work that you need to make about something that is very hard. And I went on this journey this year. So I did a show that happened end of April, beginning of May, called Mother Time. And I hadn't done an art show on my own. I had done tons of group shows in the past couple of years, but I hadn't done anything where it was my name to it. And that holds some responsibility of what you're going to put out into the world. So I want to take you on the process of making this show. It took about 7 months of pretty hard focus. And I also, throughout this presentation, you'll see there's some questions that I had to kind of ask myself, as well as things I've learned along the way that I hope can help you as you journey on through the path of being an artist. So this was my statement for the show, and I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to start this way. This will be the only time you'll hear me really monologue in this way. But Mother Time explores the artist's personal journey of trying to get pregnant. The work speaks to the cycle of hope and disappointment involved and the way these jarring swings affect every aspect of life. The process of trying, while extremely individual to the artist, is hardly uncommon. The work grapples with a profound non-space of extreme potential and extreme loss that is experienced by countless hopeful would-be mothers. So this is quite a topic. It's quite a topic to put out in the world, especially during a time where I did not come to this show with my newborn baby in hand. So this was a show that I actually put on during the process of this exact cycle of hope, disappointment, loss, all of those things. And I'll talk a little bit about deciding whether you want to do that. A word to the wise, it is complicated. So this all started, I have been on a fertility journey for a few years, and then I met my husband, we got married, and I thought, well, that was the hard part. Now we're gonna have a baby. And that didn't work out the way I thought, and we decided to go through the IVF process in November of the last year. So during the process of doing IVF, if anyone has experienced it, or just being a woman, there's a lot of hormones, or being a partner to a woman, you might know there's a lot of hormones. And IVF, you're actually giving yourself injections to create a balance of hormones to help you possibly have a baby. So we did this in November, and it was unsuccessful. And during the time of doing this, I started to draw. And I was drawing already, but then it became very clear that I was using drawing and my artwork to actually really work through these feelings in a way that I had alluded to things in my work, but this was a time where it was really just all needed to come out. So I became very obsessed with this idea of like cycles. So my work involves a lot of florals and flowers, but this was a lot about the cycles, the egg, how this all flows and becomes something. I was also learning about the process of IVF, which most of us, and I hope you'll never have to really know the whole intricacies of it, but it's things like, I realized that as a woman, I was never educated on really how my body worked. And I was actually just given the pill when I needed it, and then off I went. And so I was really disconnected from how this actually worked. So I also got very obsessed with family crests and these ideas of legacy and building and the idea of worth. You know, what if you do not have a legacy? What if that is not what you're leaving behind in that way? So all of these things were happening. I also started to look at toile patterning. I was always loving Delft pottery from traveling, but toile became really interesting because it was actually in France when this started. It was a way of printmaking. It was how they could actually print on fabric. And the artists were actually commissioned to do scenes that were important of the time. And I thought that was really interesting of what is important of my time and how, and there is a lot of artists doing contemporary toile, but I got really interested in the idea of what if this was about IVF. And there's very few, there's lots of artwork on fertility, but there actually wasn't a ton on you know, the beautiful Art Nouveau needles that came to be from my work. So in comes Penny Lane Chen. You are going to see this photo throughout this presentation. The woman is here herself. Penny Lane, if you don't know her, is an artist consultant. And so she will come into your studio and she will help you sift through the thoughts, feelings, tears, ideas. And what is so important about this is I was way too close to this work. I was living this work, and Penny has always been really good at breaking things into steps. So a big thing she's a proponent of is making your visual vocabulary. I had done this over the years. My work always had eggs in it, flowers, these ideas. But when I thought back to this idea of visual vocabulary, this was a way for me to express things in symbols. It was very difficult to know the idea of making artwork about this very personal topic. I didn't want to draw like a hospital bed. I didn't want like a narrative of this time for me. I wanted beautiful symbols. So this was my sort of process. The sketches then became literally written down ideas and symbols into my visual vocabulary. So this was all happening. This was the midst of also finding out that this process was not working, and I decided to make it way more overcomplicated by teaming up with another artist community. So run an artist community called the Thrive Together Network. We're online. It's for female, non-binary, and queer artists. And we decided, me and another founder, Kaylin, that we were going to set a challenge, and it was called Taking Up Space. And we asked artists to put on their own art show in the month of May 2022, just to see if people could, if they needed a push to really make some of their goals and dreams happen. So I thought, I can't ask people to do something if I am not willing to do it myself. So I thought, I will have a show. I will have a show. It will be at my studio. It will be a place that I can get out all of these ideas and take some great photos, and isn't that brilliant? That is so brilliant. It'll be a resume builder, you know? Huh, really brilliant. So I was, you know, it was very private, all of this happening at this time. And my husband said to me, and he was right, although it's annoying. Again, remember the hormones are happening. And he said, you have an opportunity here to tell a story where there isn't an ending yet. So it is different if the baby is at the show, or if we have made the choice to, there's no baby, but this is in it, there's no ending. I believe that is why this show was very powerful. I will say experiencing it was very difficult. So I think next time, I'll wait a while, and I will show up, and I'll show up super smug, and I'll say, look at me, and look at this hardship that is far away from me. But what was interesting about doing it this way is it attracted people that needed to hear this story. And it became a space to tell this story. It became a place where I could make those connections. So I do think it was an opportunity to tell a great story. I do think it was very foolish. So it is your choice when you pick your hard stuff, what you decide to go with on that. And then another kind of twist of fate in the story is that I was given a beautiful art space to do this show. So it went from, I will secretly do this in my studio, I will take great pictures, to a very good friend of mine very generously giving me her very cool Zoe Pollock art space. And I included this bottom photo for you as artists. There was, math, not the thing, but like a 20-foot high cement wall in this space. And for Zoe, who makes beautiful rugs and huge abstract paintings, that wall looked small. And I went in there, and that was so overwhelming. Because the wall also, there's a kind of a ledge, and it just keeps going. And my work is small, and I didn't really have a plan. And it was the kind of thing where I was like, I can't say no to this, but this is terrifying and horrible all at the same time. So I said yes, as we do. And a question that came from this point of seeing this space was, what is the purpose of this show? Because I'm also walking into a space that it's very much commercial work. This is Zoe's livelihood, this is her business, and there's a ton of foot traffic. This was an opportunity to sell out a show, to really do something here. And I wasn't proven wrong on this, but I didn't think that people really were gonna be, just couldn't wait to get their hands on my IVF pregnancy journey artwork. So I had to really make a choice about what I could hide these symbols within work, or was I going to just do the hard stuff, share the whole thing. So I made a decision right there that the purpose for me was to do a show about something very difficult and a personal journey of my own. Sales was not a part of this equation. It was an added bonus. And I tell you that because I'm going to show you how I went about making the work. And it was a lot of personal investment time-wise, but also financially. And that was a choice I made in that moment of, I am going to give this what the work needs, and I am not going to go at this from a commercial artist point of view. I teach basically full-time, run a community. I was able to make that choice and decide. So I think it's important when we see these shows on Instagram that look so cool, and we see other artists doing all these cool things, sometimes to think like, what is the purpose? How are they doing it? And that you may not be in a position to do something similar, and it may not be your time to push it that far, or however you want to go about it. I do think it's a place to ask yourself, what is the purpose? Another big thing that came up here was, now I had the space, I had the courage, I was gonna do this, and I had a lot of ideas, and that big cement wall had to be filled. So this is where I'm gonna share where you're like, I have all these cool ideas, and again, on Instagram, everyone else seems capable of making bronze sculptures that float in the air, suspended on wires. Like, that would tell my story so well. So I got obsessed with these family crests. I decided that they needed to be carved out of wood, okay? Yep. And then, so I went through a whole path of like on Fiverr, talking to digital artists that could make 3D renderings of these crests that I had drawn, and then they were it was a whole thing. You will see that did not happen. So this was a time of really brainstorming. And I included these, and these are all things that were sent to poor, sweet Penny Lane, okay? These were the ideas of, I got really obsessed with the idea of tracking, because when you're trying to get pregnant or you have to do IVF, you have to know everything that's happening, which then people like to tell you that you shouldn't overly stress or think about it. And you're like, well, in my phone, I have to document when I'm spotting. I have to document if I'm feeling a little sad. And so it just doesn't help in that whole thing. So I was obsessed with tracking. So I told Penny, I want to stack these numbers. And she was like, do you know that that is probably like 10,000 small pieces of things that you're going to have to find? And I was like, I think that'll do. So there was a lot of disconnect from the concept to reality. I got very obsessed with, the family crest, but also people actually interacting, like building blocks, like kids' toys. And then it was going to be a quilt, but I wanted it out of like wood or fabric. It was very exciting times, and also a time of incredible lack of knowledge of how new materials were going to work. But that, for me, was a big push at this time of I wanted to try new things. I wanted to push. Came to the question of, what resources do I have? What do I have that would actually take some of these big concepts and turn them into a reality that I could be really proud of, and what could that look like? So for me, resources, I have a very strong community that supports me. I have very talented friends. I also love learning. I'm not afraid to try to figure something out. And so it kind of set me on this path of, what are the big dreams and who can I call upon? So this is a good friend of mine, Selena, and her business partner, Najib, and they run an upholstery shop. And I wanted something installed. I wanted something physical, and I was obsessed with the toile. So I thought at first it was gonna be like a cave thing that you had to get, like a womb you had to get into. It was going to be at one point a throne. We landed on a beautiful backdrop of fabric, and Penny said 2 lamps to anchor and this beautiful love seat. The love seat was in Selena's shop. The love seat was in Selena's shop. It belonged to her mother. It had been in their families forever. And it was this moment of, this was meant for this moment. And it was so wonderful. And so we made this plan of how we were gonna do it. Then it was my part. I had to figure out the fabric. So I got going on Skillshare, and there is actually a Skillshare class on how to make toile. It was amazing. I wrote the woman personally and said, you just saved my life. Like, who are you? Thank you so much. And I got to work to study how the shapes worked, what program to do it on, and how to get it printed on fabric, which is spoon flour. If anyone is looking to print on fabric, they were amazing. So I got my fabric done, and we went to Penny's shop. This is also my sweet mother up at the top, who has a background in sewing, and Mary Smith is a very big part of this process. So that's the beautiful love seat that was just sitting packaged up in the rafters of this place. So great. And the lamps were off of Facebook Marketplace, which was the greatest find. So it was a whole process of getting the fabric done, and then headed to the shop for only a day of power fabricking. I did literally nothing. I got people scissors and drinks, but it was very good. And then this is the Penny Lane moment where she pops up to say, you should do this. This is the most important thing I can give you from this talk. If you are doing a show, get the measurements and build yourself a little maquette, because then you know the space you have. And because I'm so visual, I know that I would have walked in here and been like, it's full, like, this is exactly how it's supposed to be. And you don't know that until you actually have the measuring. So I made my little maquette. I even printed cement texture on paper. I had to know. And so I knew for framing, and then I'd have my install piece. That long piece in the middle was supposed to be this brilliant tracking piece. That never happened, but it was going to be brilliant. And that was my setup. So the next project for me were these crests. I gave up on getting them carved from wood. It was very hard to let go, but it was a very important choice that I called it quits. So I started building crests, and the crests were a lot about this visual vocabulary. The crests became very much about the mental work of trying to get something happen in your life that you have no control over. So the symbols started to play in. I studied a lot of Art Nouveau, a lot of crests, and how they were going to come together. And so this is sort of over, lots of sketchbook pages put together, but I made my little legend of exactly what these things meant to me. And a lot of this time was spent writing. Writing became really important in a way that I had never done, and I think it's because I had never ventured on something so personal. And Penny says, you print off, cheaply, you just print off the crests so that you know what they're going to look like big. So I drew these on my iPad, so I was constantly looking at them at this size, and I thought it all worked. But until you see something the scale, it really changed. So the one on the end, the blue, it actually turned out completely different in the final show, because once it became big, it didn't have enough strength. The colors were actually quite off. That was really helpful for me because I had always been working small. So little hot tip. The other piece, so the tracking piece, I had to let it go. It was gonna be on hospital paper, like the ones they pull for the bed, and then it was a whole thing. Did not work. So I had been making what I called woodcuts, so wooden hanging sculptures. These ones actually my mom cut out of wood out of a shop, and I had painted them up, and I really liked them. It's kind of, for me, my mom actually taught folk art classes to kids when I was growing up, when folk art was the rage, like a rooster was everywhere, or a snowman, paper towel holder, anyone? Witch in the front on a stake in the Halloween, yeah, the whole thing. And so it was very much an homage to how I was mothered, how I grew up, was making something out of wood. But to make it more complicated, I decided it should be the size of me, and it should reference what's happening in the body, and this idea of the body being a vessel, this idea of fate, this idea of hope, the candle. So this piece was as big as me, and I wanted to get it laser cut so that I could keep all these very intricate elements. Was a fool's errand. So I got this laser cut without thinking that it was incredibly hard to paint in all the bits. I also didn't realize that they recommended to get it cut out of MDF. That's not wood, by the way. You think it's wood when you write the email back and you say, sure, sounds great, until I got it back. No, the amount of priming, so this now has 5 coats of primer to seal everything up so that I felt comfortable hanging it and selling it, because if any water gets in. So it is sealed, nothing's getting in there, 3 coats of varnish, and it was terrible. And it was the last piece of the show, and it was done literally 3 days before. And I had everything organized, and all to say is that when you're in it, just know everything takes a lot of time. And these pieces that you're like, I got this. They're laser cutting it. It'll work out. It did. You'll see it did. So a big part of the show was then, all of this thought, all of this time went into the work. How did I want to share what it was about? Because a big thing, especially with talking about something that's very personal and something that you're going through, it's inappropriate to cry every time you tell every single person about this thing, because you invited them there. Then you're just inviting them into your nest of tears. You cannot do that. So I worked very hard on creating statements that went with each of the pieces. This whole time, all that happened for the show were 5 pieces of work: 3 crests, a woodcut, and an installation. But when I went through them, because of the visual vocabulary, because of the time going through all the failed ideas, I had a very strong sense of what they were. So I wrote up statements, I got them properly edited by Penny's team, and I made a booklet. And this booklet kind of saved me. So if you are doing a show about something deep and meaningful, have a booklet. So people loved it. They took it, they read each piece, they could take it home, it had all my information on it, they could follow along. I had the statements with the work, but it was actually, and this was a last minute decision where I was just thought, I don't want people to see a statement on the wall and feel like it's too long to read, whereas if you've had something in your hand, there's more of, I want to flip through this. And it really, really helped. So one thing I did want to talk about was, I now believe that making art about the hard stuff and sharing it is a great thing to do. I really do think that, but it comes with a lot of responsibility for yourself, but also for other people and how you present it. So I think it is very valuable to make work that is very hard, and it is up to you whether anyone knows that. I would not share if it is not something that you can continually talk about, because what happens is you have allowed it to be completely off limits. So you cannot be unvulnerable People cannot unknow that they know that you're trying to get pregnant. And so that is when also people want to share advice, they want to be helpful, they want to be kind. And if you're not ready for that, or they might have another opinion on the whole thing. I had a very lovely experience in sharing what my work was about. It's pretty hard to be mean about this, but it still was a lot. And it's still something that is now open, fair game. And that also goes beyond just someone looking at my art. It also goes to our entire families. So it was, you know, a big conversation I had to have with my partner. And, you know, I don't think he'd love that his mom knows so much about our lives right now. But he knew when he married me, there would be an art show with his sperm in it one day. So one thing I did do, and this was advice I got from Thrive, my community of artists, and a friend said to me, she was like, maybe it's time to share little bits. So I was really nervous about the opening. And I knew it was going to be fine. I had my booklet, but what would it be like to kind of prep people? And I reframed it in, I want someone to know what they're in for, because I know how hard it is to go through this. And if I showed up somewhere on a bad day when I had found out news or whatever, that it's irresponsible for me not to prep my audience. And once I could kind of flip that to it was helping someone else, it was actually important work, I was able very easily to then share. So I broke up a lot of my work into these symbols. So I had worked mostly digitally, so I was able to pull and would make a post just about one of the pieces. And I would share just lines of my statements. And a big part of it is that I had worked really hard on writing these statements, paid good hard cash to get them edited, and I was like, I want this to keep going. It needs to have some life just beyond this one moment. The show was only 3 days, so it was, you either came and saw it or it wasn't there anymore. So this was a great way to kind of prolong that and share what it was all about. This was really important. By the time anyone came to my show, everyone knew what they were in for. And so I didn't have a ton of questions. It wasn't a surprise, and that made a huge difference comfort-wise for me. So this is the show. So it did happen. I hope you were on the wild ride with me, all my big ideas. This is the installation piece that came about, and this is the whole space. So again, it looks a lot like my little model, right? And everything was the right size because, again, we only had an hour to set it up. So it is also very important to show up and be professional and know where everything goes. So these are the crests. And the crests actually became a lot about this mental work. It was a theme of Mother Time holds all the cards. I pictured her like the dealer of this game, because a big thing is not having control and just knowing that you have to accept the cards you were dealt. And so this theme with the crests came about, and it was a lot around symbols. So you'll see there's cups, and the cup is, is the cup half full? Is the cup half empty? And it's your choice. And it's always a choice to be mentally happy that you're okay, And then shove everything down. No, just kidding. And the blades of grass were very much, the grass is always greener. And it is so easy to get feeling that way, especially when, people love to announce that they're having their second or third child. They just can't help themselves. And so it's hard to not internalize all of that. And the infinity sign is one that is in it a lot. And that infinity sign is just that it can feel very endless, and it's work to make that feel hopeful. It's work to be appreciative that you even get this opportunity. So Mother Time was this feature piece in the middle, and then I have my storks, and they are carrying coins. So that piece is really about the IVF process. The storks take your coins, and you don't necessarily get a baby, but the money definitely is gone. So the Latin phrase in the bottom is the house always wins, and that was the gambler. So that's the crest of the gambler. But that is also the fountain of youth. And so is the fountain of youth run out, or is it creating a nest? And there are 5 golden eggs, and there are needles. It's a whole thing. Okay, I really went there. The visual vocabulary really got me there. So this is the crest of the players, and again, this mental work, and have the needles, some ovaries, it's a whole thing. And, okay, yeah, so this is where the visual vocabulary really helped me pull these symbols together, and I could really play off of them. And I just think it's such a great tool if you are trying to express something very difficult and aren't sure if you want to be narrative or how close you want to be to the actual thing. Symbols, I highly recommend. Okay, this is the massive woodcut. So it did turn out, and I do really like it, and I do really hate it all at the same time. No, I remember the hours spent. And this one, again, is women's work. No matter how much your partner wants to be there for you, it is your body, and it is your journey in many ways. So this was there, the trying to get pregnant. And this is the piece called The Waiting Room. So the waiting room is the idea that when you are wanting something, and this could be, in my case, to have a child, this could be, I believe, many other times in our life, when we really want that thing that we have no control over, it taints everything around you. You become surrounded, it is all you see, and so the pattern was to take over that. I also created hospital gowns, Mother Mary, so those babies, and the idea of the viewer could put on the gown, sit on the love seat also being a sense of partnership, and the clock was mother time, always ticking away behind you. So for the opening, I put on a looped ticking sound, and so the idea is that you're sitting and you're surrounded and you're hearing this noise, because especially when you're trying, you feel like, you know, the years are going, the eggs are dying, you're screwed, and you're constantly living in this. And then people tell you, don't worry about it, you're fine. So these were detail shots, and it was something that was really important to me, that it felt like an installation. I had never done that, so we have the timepieces as the hanger, and then this was glue guns to make those lamps happen, which was a whole thing, but I'm very proud of them. They looked clean and like they were made that way. So the waiting room is all about when you're in it, and yeah, so these were the statements that went with each piece. They were on the wall and then in the book that people could read. So these are just pictures of my team that helped me and showed up. So Zoe and Jeremy, I have Najib and Selena on the opening. And I think that's also what's so exciting, is when you are really putting yourself out there and the people around you know that, and just seeing, like, I felt so loved. And I think as hard as it was to be really open about what was happening, so many people showed up for me, and that whole grass is always greener, the cup half full, the cup half empty. It was very hard to feel, you can have all the feelings, it's complicated, but I felt very loved, and that's an important thing. Sweet Penny, Toile on Toile, Mother Mary, there's Blair, and it was a beautiful, beautiful night. So I just wanted to leave you with some gems when you're thinking of sharing something difficult. Visual vocabulary holds a lot of power. It is how you are sharing things to the world. And symbols are a great way to kind of make them your own, how you want to share it. Writing about the work became something that made the visual vocabulary stronger, and also allowed me to explain what it was all about. Because when it came down to it, I was exhausted and I was spent. And so I needed the words when I was in it and really excited about the work to kind of, it really guided me, it carried me through. Know your why, so again, know the purpose of the show. I would have had a very different show experience if I had presented this show and thought I would sell out this show. That would have been very hard, and I would have shown up differently. This show, because I knew the purpose, I knew why I was there, was awesome. It was delightful. And then I have since, even though I didn't sell, I sold a few prints at the show, but that wasn't the purpose. I've now used the show to do a talk like this. I have also packaged it for different grants. I have used this a lot of different ways other than trying to sell work, but I knew my why. Planning matters. It's honestly the first time I've ever taken this so seriously. I've done lots of shows where it's just, I knew there was a big wall and I was gonna fill it, but that cement wall haunted me, and Zoe's beautiful space haunted me, and I knew it needed to look perfect. And so taking the time, and it does take time and prep to then be able to plan and get it right. A big thing is build your team. Like, we need support throughout this whole process, and whether that's other artists or family and friends, but it really does matter when you're sharing hard things and when you're doing art. Let's be real, being an artist, hard thing, you're doing it, we need help. And share on your terms. So just be really thoughtful about how you want to share, because it lives on, and then it is open, it is fair game, and it's also not necessary. So this show, I had debated saying, it is about wanting something that you don't have control over, and that would have been great. I think people would have still connected with that idea. I just knew that it wasn't enough for where I was at. You can still share difficult things in a generalized way. You don't have to, people don't have to know that, we're trying to get pregnant, it's this whole thing, but that was important to me. So just really thinking through what's important to you and knowing that you have to live beyond the 3-day show. Judy in Ontario still knows that you're trying to get pregnant. So you have to, that's Blair's mother. And so get proper photos is my last tip. So proper photos are very important for then taking this beyond, especially if you know your why and use something like this to then get grants, to do different proposals, do talks. It was hard to, pay another $400 at the end of this to have this photographer, but that's really all I have left of the show. And it's still working for me. It's still something I'm so proud of. So that was a huge, huge one for me, is take the time to do that. And that's it. That's the show. I did it.
Yay. Do we have any questions from the audience at all?
Hi.
If you can just wait for a microphone.
Oh, yeah. We know the rules.
Hello, Jamie.
Hello.
So you did this in a space that was not your original plan. And I was curious, how early in the process did you know you were moving into this space, and then how much that informed the work and what actually went into the show?
Yes. I had a maquette done of the first space. So it was November was when this all started, and January is when I found out about the new space. So I had a plan, but it was very much this plan, but the first space was much bigger. And instead we decided, again, this is help here, decided to actually do fewer pieces, bigger, better, more strategic, to get the space look and feel that I wanted. And honestly, the original was in a common area of my studio, and it would have been what it would have been, but it would not have looked like that. And for the amount of time and the amount of money and the amount of effort I put in, I'm so grateful that the space kind of became like part of the show. Like, it was part of the whole vibe and ambiance. And before it would have been tucked up in an East Van studio, so it just didn't have the same feel. So yeah, it changed it a lot. Panicked me a lot. Yeah, but good.
Hi, Jamie. I just want to say, first of all, that I'm really proud of you for this work, and I know we've talked about it a lot through the process. This is the first time that you have created something so personal and shared it with the world, which I'm no stranger to in my own work, so I know how it feels to do that. While you were creating the work, I imagine you probably went through a fairly deep catharsis around, the show and everything that you were going through. How has the show changed your relationship with your IVF journey?
So it burnt me out in a really good way. So after the show happened, it was just all the focus, all the time, all the energy. Like I said everything I wanted to say, and it's like I needed like a long nap. And so since then, it's been more peaceful, I think, like less serious. I don't know if we'll do IVF again, which was a big thing I never thought I'd say. And so it's led to bigger conversations about what else does that mean for us. Yeah, I got tired of it. I got tired of talking about it. Whereas before it was literally the waiting room. It was everything I was experiencing was had that around. So now I feel like I did it. Like I've dealt with you. Like that show happened, and then the baby now is, that's it. Honestly, it will happen or it won't. Like it's one of those things where you realize the more you think about something, the more you worry about something, doesn't make something happen. And I think I'm really grateful to be an artist, and sometimes I don't feel that way. Sometimes I feel like it's a really hard thing to be an artist, and I think I would have a different life if I could just go on and be with the muggles out enjoying the world. But when I went through this, and I have friends that have gone through things, they didn't get this. I got to put it out there. Good things have come from it in a way that I'm really proud of. But it was very vulnerable. So I went through like a vulnerability hangover, and now I'm kind of, I don't know, just, I did it. It's done. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I was curious about one of the images in one of the crests, and it's the figure, sort of the face and hair, and it's sort of submerged. Is that Mother Time? Is that you?
Yeah, that's Mother Time. She's not me. No, she's much more powerful. And yeah, I think of her as like lurking. And then I think of that for me was sort of this idea of, she's still above water. There's still time. It's in some ways hopeful, but she's getting low, as well. But she's always going to be there watching. I don't know what the next iteration, if she'll be like above the hourglass, but yeah, it became, it was interesting by working on this work, it became like she was personified. And then with the clock, that was also Mother Time, and the sound in a way that I don't think I've ever pushed work far enough and deep enough to have these sort of characters emerge, have these narratives happen. I have always done an idea, done a few pieces, and felt, okay, I did it, moved on, let's put it on the website, let's move on. And it was truly 7 months of just thinking this. So of course I had time to sort of get to know her, and yeah, she's like a frenemy, Like I love her, but I'm nervous of her and scared all the time. So, yes.
Question.
Yes.
Can you talk about the booklet?
You have to use your mic.
I have a mic.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Just about the booklet and how that's a lot of writing.
Yeah.
That's really focused on one artwork, basically. So how did that develop, and how did you work on that, and how long did that take to pull together?
A big part of this process was not knowing how I was going to feel at the opening. So there were times in doing this work that I imagined being pregnant at this opening. That was early on. There were times where I thought, are we going to do another round? Is that going to be around this time? I didn't know how I was actually going to be able to show up. And so I wanted it to be a script of me if I couldn't physically be there. And I knew I would, I knew that I would try my hardest to be there, but at the end of the day, it was about this work being out in the world. So I wanted someone to be able to view the work, not know me, not have to speak to me, and get everything that I wanted them to out of the work. So very much a first time for me to put that much into the pieces. But again, that was probably the best thing that I did for myself for that show. And then having the symbols to fall back on. The symbols allowed me to connect ideas in a way that I think a viewer, they found it very helpful because it was almost a guide to a find me game of, oh, the cups are here, this is there. So, yeah.
Any other comments, questions?
Hi. Hi, Jamie. I can only imagine the amount of time and energy spent working on this show, and I'm curious as how you're taking care of yourself now. I know that you mentioned that you're doing grants and you're doing a talk here at the Richmond Art Gallery, but how exactly are you taking care of yourself and beyond until you get ready for your next show?
Yeah. I'm not doing much art, and it feels great. I've used the photos a lot. I've reflected. Doing a talk like this was so wonderful to put it all together in the whole journey, to appreciate and be really grateful for the time and energy I did put in. But definitely taking a break from it. I think there would be opportunity to show this again, to do more work about this. This is a very deep topic. And as of right now, I will not be doing that. I feel like I made my peace. It is at rest. And hopefully there's a version 2 that is maybe more of a reflection of this time when I have moved past it. So I think just gave myself a bit of a break. And I was doing acupuncture during this time every week, part of the fertility training, to get things going. And I was doing all the supplements, I was doing all the things. And this show I took down 2 days after everything, and I was so tired. I have not taken another supplement. I have stopped going to acupuncture, and I've stopped drawing. It will come back, but it was been this beautiful time of just, I did it, so a break, yeah.
Hi, Jamie. I've kind of got 2 questions. I'm not sure that they're related. I'll ask you the one that came to my mind first. It was a practical one, a makey one. Your decision to go with doing the print works of the crests compared to the carvings, was that a time issue, or was it being able to get hold? Was it a process? Was it a fabrication issue?
Yeah, so it was definitely more that I was overcomplicating the point issue. So when I went down this whole rabbit hole of it should be carved of wood, I was almost taking it so literally to try to recreate the crest. And I think, it would look very cool, but really what was important about this work was the symbols were there, that it was just as professional as it could be. And so it was such a relief when I let that go, because I could focus on actually making these images as good as they could be. I don't use a lot of color in my work. I actually typically have only used black and white. And so it was a big learning. It's a whole other Skillshare class to learn about color and using palette digitally. So it was more that the materials and the big idea didn't really become a reality, but then in the end, I think this is much better. I think it would have been all about that these are out of wood. And I couldn't really see that because I just thought that was the idea, but now having them just beautifully printed and framed, it became really about the symbols and what they're about, yeah.
Okay, so thank you. And then the second part, it was, I don't know enough about your work. I did take a look at your website today, but would you say your approach to art making is always concept first?
I think it is. I think it is now. I think it was always there. I really love research. I really love thinking about things, but I hadn't done anything where this one specific concept guided a whole part of my practice and a whole show. I had moved on too quickly. So I actually, when I say I'm taking a break from art making, it's more that I'm actually looking back on some of my other series, and I want to even flesh them out more. I want to write about them more because I think the concepts were there, but I didn't give them enough time.
So really this show, obviously your experiences have really kind of blossomed your practice.
Yeah, yeah. And it was just because of the deadline and because of the space and also community. I had a community, so over 65 people did shows in the month of May as part of this initiative. So this was there was no out, and it had to be at a certain time, and so I couldn't get distracted. It became a precious priority in a way that I've never given my work. So, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you for the talk. I learned about you from Kathy. She told me about Thrive. I just want to know, how did you get started? What made you start the group?
A community? Yeah, so I was a high school art teacher for a few years. I did not last long. And then I decided I was 26 and carefree and had savings in the bank, and I was gonna be an artist, and off I went into the Vancouver art world where I knew no one. And I floundered and floundered for a year or two and tried a lot of different things and painted a lot of terrible paintings. And in that time, what I found was that there was I'd gone to art school, but there was just no guidebook. There was no path laid out for me at all. I also realized that being an artist actually involves a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of business skills that were never talked about. So I met a lot of female artists and realized that they were a wealth of knowledge. So I had a studio at the time, and I just I made groups of female artists. I was like, come hang out, let's talk about things, and we started to share. So that was in 2015, so 7 years ago. And it was kind of, I think I would say before community was cool or there was much out there, and we would meet in person and just chat, and I think we all became like a lifeline for each other. And so now it's more online, and it's especially because of the pandemic and women all over the world. And yeah, it's become it's always been important to me, but doing this show and giving myself time to do my practice, I actually realized exceptionally how valuable it is, because you are very alone and you're very in it, and other artists get it. So yeah, so I've had all the ups and downs of being an artist, but also ups and downs of entrepreneurship, and but community's always been a big part of it. Yeah.
Hi, Jamie. Your story is just incredible. I think us as women, or I'll talk about myself, been through the pregnancies and everything, just the hardships. It was not easy. And us not telling our story, And so I think stories are really, really important. Even as artists, like I teach adults with disabilities art for the last 30 or more years. Learned a lot, how to teach, how to modify. People with disabilities have different ways of painting or creating. I am an artist myself. I have many, many pieces at home. Never know where to show my work. And what advice would you give us there?
Well, I'm a big advocate of doing your own art show, and it's a lot of work, but I actually really believe that it's about us advocating for ourselves and putting ourselves out there, applying for as much as you can. Definitely writing about your work, all those things help add to it, but I am a big advocate of not waiting to be discovered or waiting for this big moment, because what I have realized is that it's actually a collection of many, many moments, many art shows, many pieces of work to be on your journey, because I don't think we ever really arrive. There's always the next thing we want. So yeah, just I would say keep making, but also writing, and then if you really want to show, you find yourself a space, ask a friend. A show doesn't have to be fancy, but it is about getting work on a wall, people seeing it, and then take good photos and share those photos.
I think that's a great way to end.
Okay, yeah.
I think.
Get your work out there.
Yes, that's a perfect way to end the salon. So thanks everyone for coming. We have the space for like almost another hour, and I have lots of food. So use this time. I'm so happy we're in person for this, which is why I wanted Jamie here in person instead of online. This is your time to chat with each other, share some ideas, ask questions. So please feel free to stay, okay? And thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you.